The part that's not tricky is how much it costs to start. So that's right in our documentation. Our item 7, which is the list of costs that you have to get started, the low number on our item 7 is $167,000 there, plus or minus. And that would include your territory fees, startup costs, initial insurance, getting your facility ready, pretty much some working capital, so just some excess cash to set aside to get the business going. It also includes about $40,000 worth of inventory, which is not really a cost that you don't almost immediately recover. So as soon as you put that inventory into, out into the field, it's already generating revenue for you. So, pre-inventory, it's $125 or so. Post-inventory, call it $165, something in that range. But that would be for a small territory, because our territory fee is variable. We can go as low as 500,000 people, and we go up to maybe around 2 million or maybe a little more than that. But we don't typically try to divide up a typical market into multiple territories unless it's a really big city. So for example, we've got 2 franchises that are going through onboarding right now. One of them is in Salt Lake City, and their territory is pretty much all of Salt Lake City. We've got another one getting ready to onboard in San Antonio, Texas, and that is pretty much all of San Antonio, Texas. And that'll be the story for most markets, where we'll have one owner in a market, and that's largely because that's how our industry tends to work and how it's played out for most of our competitors anyways. Even if they have somebody that has a market but they have 4 agreements that they have to manage, we kind of dispense with that and said we're just going to have one single agreement. So if you're in a market, I would say that's more typical, let's say 1 million, 1.5 million people, then your startup costs are going to be about $250,000. Now, again, that includes still $40K of inventory, about $25,000 of working capital. That's just cash you put in the bank. So, not all of that is money immediately out the door. But that's roughly what we're looking at from a cost to get started standpoint. In terms of scalability, I'll say what I can about this. A couple of things that I think are good to know. One of them is that when we look back at the build that we did at 101 Mobility, most of the franchises that we awarded early on, like the first one, the second one, the third one, that was 2010. They're all still there. They're all still operating 15 years later. They've built businesses of meaningful scale. They have, in many cases, expanded into multiple locations like Jennifer and Gordon did. So there's good longevity there. The turnover rate at 101 Mobility has been very low. So most of the owners that get in and are focused and paying attention and doing a reasonably good job are successful enough to stick around. Like they've been, in that industry and at that system for, in many cases, up to 15 years now. So while I can't talk specifically about their actual revenue numbers, I know that they've, grown good businesses, so much so that in many cases they brought family members into the business. Like, the first franchise that we awarded at 101 now has, both of his sons are in the business with him, which I think is an aspiration that a lot of entrepreneurs have is, maybe one day my kids can get involved, so that's a good example. I think another data point that we could give you is the fact that, Jen and Gordon built, they opened their business in 2012 and they sold it to private equity in 2020. Private equity isn't in the business of buying teeny tiny businesses that don't make money. And so, we can't really disclose what those numbers got to, but it was substantial enough to catch the eye of the corporate office. And at the time they were interested in buying up a couple of the bigger, locations, and went ahead and did that with Jen and Gordon. And so I would say the other thing that I would tell you is for those who are willing to do some research, there's data points out there. There are some mobility businesses for sale. Go to Biz Buy Sell and bounce around. There's some of them for sale. You can see what they're, and those listings will typically list, revenue and SDE, seller discretionary earnings. So that's a data point that you can gather. There's other sort of industry data out there that you can gather and start to piece together what that picture looks like. A couple of other things I'll tell you that I think are safe to say is that, the bread and butter product that we sell, being a straight rail stair lift, kind of the number one product that we sell, they're typically retailing for about $4,000. Curved rail stair lifts retail for between $10,000 and $20,000, depending on the complexity. Platform lifts are in the $6,000 to $10,000 range, depending on the complexity. Ramp configurations are, we sell portable small ramps that may be as low as a few $100s, but if you're installing a modular ramp system, that's usually several $1,000s. So that's kind of, I guess, an idea around like typical, ticket would be for products that we sell. And this isn't anything you couldn't find out for yourself. You can go online and look this up and you'll find that same information. But, that's probably about as much as I can say without crossing the lines of what we're allowed to talk about.